Commissioner Moore, how did you get to this office, to being Commissioner of District 2?
But I had asked you who your audience was because when I was younger, I remember looking at a county commissioner and looking what they were involved with, and I was like, who would ever want to do that? And I just thought everything began and ended in Tallahassee and Washington, and now you couldn't get me to go to either of those places. And
Right.
I think as you get more and more into governance, you realize that the rubber hits the road at the local level, and that's where we really need our most engaged public servants.
Indeed.
And so your question, how I got here, I was a daughter of a banker and a musician in upstate New York, and I went to the University of Michigan, majored in music education, and then I came to Florida to study with a very famous flute teacher, Jeffrey Gilbert, and he was director of music orchestras at Stetson at that time, but he had taught famous flautists from all over the world. So I packed everything into my Ford Escort after I graduated from Michigan and came down here. And I think what was so special about Orlando was the feeling that it was an up and coming place. You were on the ground floor. You could get involved and do things and be part of something great. And you didn't really have to be the child of somebody famous or a long lineage of business people or elected officials. If you had the energy and enthusiasm and exuberance, you could be part of it. And so, I began getting involved in local politics.
Yes.
And I ran some campaigns. I can remember my first campaign. I had a 2-year-old and I was pregnant.
Wow.
And so it was for Dr. Bob Brooks back in 1994, and I just loved it. So I would really prefer to be behind the scenes.
Okay.
Happy to do that, be a policymaker and organizer. Never really wanted to be the one out front because I'm a musician. I was always happy to be up in front of a crowd with a flute, but talking wasn't necessarily my thing. I always tell people I'm a little bit of an introvert.
Sure.
And you know that because on a day off, I like to curl up in bed and read a book.
Okay. All right.
And I'm always reading. That'll come later. But it was 2008, and I was not happy with the school board. And so I said, well, I have a music education degree and I've taught. So why don't I run, And I guess the rest is history, 10 years on the school board. And then this seat opened up and I ran for the county commission. So I will tell you, it is much better being on the elected side than being the one behind the scene, because you can work really hard for a candidate and you never really know how well they're going to be when they get in office.
That's a very good point. I was going to ask you, which side of the campaign do you enjoy the most? The one behind the scenes or being out front? And you just pretty much answered that.
Well, I like the strategy of the campaign.
Sure. Yes.
And we're going to talk about my last campaign because you said you were going to ask me about that. But,
yes.
I guess I'm sort of a fixer by nature. So this is the perfect job. Every day people call us with problems, and that's what we have to try to do.
Okay.
Fix problems.
Music was a large component of your tenure as school board. Is that correct?
Oh, sure. I had a art and jazz festival that I did at the Pop Amphitheater for 9 years, and was very instrumental in getting orchestras in all the middle schools. And I always considered myself a supporter of the arts. And so I served on the United Arts Board as well. And the other day they called me to go see the Jazz on 6th. And I was so proud of that program that children in multiple grades get to go to the Dr. Phillips Center. And it was a phenomenal program explaining the basis of jazz and the history of some of the greats, Dizzy Gillespie and others. And it was just so well done. And to think, I came from Rochester, New York, with East Smith School of Music, and my dad has a PhD in music, and I never thought I would see Orange County, Orlando being so cultural. So to watch all the programming and been able to vote on the county commission to put more money into arts groups has really been a dream come true.
That's excellent. I was reviewing your history on your last campaign and being on the school board. And to speak of your campaigns, what was the most satisfying experience of all of your campaigns?
probably the last one, because I was just really excited to have won all of Pine Hills.
Right. It was a
I
very
was like,
convincing win.
that night I was just so ecstatic. I never thought I'd see that happen. And so, my state is very diverse. I have a lot of undocumented Hispanics, so they don't really factor into when you're campaigning, but they're certainly there. And I'm dealing with an issue with the farm workers now.
Okay.
And so certainly, and I know from being the school board, which schools where we had heavy populations of undocumented children, there's a lot of needs here. But the sweetest children, I think they're the most excited about living in a community and being part of it. When I would teach Apopka history, because I wrote a book on the history of Apopka when I was on the school board as well. I wanted to celebrate all those new schools. I wanted each of the schools to be very unique and have a sense of place. And I wanted the children to realize the history that went into getting that building so that they would take care of it. And when I go into a lot of the schools now, I was probably pretty instrumental in getting them all to do murals and historic displays. I helped to put together a really nice exhibit of Phyllis Wheatley at Phyllis Wheatley Elementary. And whenever you see the pictures of dignitaries or student winning award, they're always standing in front of that display.
Yes.
And so now I'm getting to instead of just school lobbies, now I'm getting to do the whole area and having a really good time with trying to have that sense of place. Because what we've learned, we're probably jumping ahead, but when you look at our culture today, suburbia is really not the best form of development to have people get along. And we're seeing the discourse and the discord in our public affairs. And there's some schools of thought of thinking a lot of it is the way we live. We're not in cities anymore or little towns. We're in these suburbs with these long roads of brick walls. There's like no creativity to it at all. Yes. And we drive home and we don't even talk to our neighbors. We don't know our neighbors. And we're becoming kind of inhospitable. And so that idea I've started, I'm on my 4th group now. We call them people groups.
Okay.
And getting the neighbors and the HOA leaders and or interested residents to have that sense of place. They have meetings, they educate themselves, they have cleanups, they do placemaking projects, et cetera, et cetera. I have 2 groups out this weekend, and I pretty much have to work every Saturday morning.
I'm sure.
And going to all of these, but that's fine. And so a lot of that came from the school board, understanding that in elementary school particularly, you can know the culture of an area by that elementary school and then by those neighborhoods. And if it's a real suburbia, they don't know each other very well. People don't always get along. Conversations are difficult. Things can end up blighted and all kinds of ill just because we don't talk to each other.
Right. And your efforts to spur conversation among neighbors and friends has paid dividends for the things that you've been able to achieve for the community and the district.